恭敬大德，will the Sangha Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto sucedoye ulahudi sammyao samputoshe. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。The unsurpassed, deep, profound, subtle, wonderful Dharma in hundreds of thousands of millions of eons is difficult to encounter. Now that I've come to receive and hold it within my sight and hearing, I bow to fathom the thus come one's true and actual meaning. Venerable Master and Dharma friends, welcome to our Sutra lecture tonight. This is October 4th, first day of retrograde Mercury. It ends on the 25th, so I'll flag that when it comes by. And we are here in Berkeley, California to look into the 6th ground of the 10 grounds chapter. And we just had our Dharma request in English, as we have done for a long time. And I'm happy to say that in the works we have a new one coming up that I think is a really good candidate. And it's not ready for presentation at this point, but it will be soon, and I think people will like it. It's definitely musically, and I think in terms of the spirit of the Dharma request, I think it's a big improvement. So that's coming up. If you'll please turn to the front page of your sutra text, that's this page here, we're going to invoke the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and the assembly of the Avatamsaka Sutra. Namo Tafang Guang Fo Huayan Ji Huayan Hai Hui Fo Pu Sa Na Tafang Guang Fo Huayan Ji Huayan Hai Hui Fo Pu Sa Na Da Fang Guang Fo Huayan Ji Huayan Hai Hui Fo Pu Sa Na Da Fang Guang Fo Huayan Ji Huayan Hai Hui Fo Pu Sa Na Da Fang Guang Fo Huayan Ji Huayan Hai Hui Pu Sa Na Mo Da Fang Guang Fo 言行还愿海为菩萨南无大方广佛华严经华严海会佛菩萨。Please turn to page 8 and 9 in your text. So, right here. 8 will be the Chinese on the left, 9 is the English on the right. Welcome to the folks who are joining us online from wherever you might be. And if you're watching this later as the archive, please dig right in. The nice thing about our YouTube channel is you can, doesn't really matter whether you're there on time or whether you're watching it 6 months, 9 months later. Dharma is still fresh. We're on the third paragraph, that is to say, with karma as a field. For the Chinese, we need to look for if you look at the first paragraph, there are 3 lines. 佛子 1, 2, 3. Start with the second paragraph. 1, 2, 3, 4. The line that starts with lo, you qu, and then over at the end, so wei. So we'll start with that so wei. The end, from the top, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Line 7 from the top at the end, so wei. Okay, we ready? So wei, 业为天，事为种，无明暗覆，爱水未润，我慢该观，见妄增长，声名色压，名色增长，生五根，诸根相对生处，处对生受，受后希求，生爱，爱增长生取，取增长生有，有生疑，与诸趣中，七五蕴身，名生，生已，衰变为老，终末未死。Okay, that's the longest Chinese, that's the longest text chunk I think we've ever done as a big piece, but there's a reason for that. Please look over to the English on 9. Let's read it in unison together. It's that is to say with karma there. Okay, here we go. Together. That is to say with karma as a field and consciousness as seeds. Ignorance is covering darkness. The water of love brings the moisture, and pride and arrogance irrigate the field. The net of views increases, and sprouts of name and form emerge. Name and form grow and create the 5 sense organs. As the sense organs pair with their objects, they make contact. When contact happens, feeling is produced. After feeling, seeking leads to love. Love grows and produces grasping. Grasping increases and existence arises. Once existence arises in each realm, a body with 5 skandhas comes about, and there is birth. Once born, bodies decline into old age, ultimately into death. Okay, we're in the actual when I was growing up, we say the meat and potatoes. Now we have to say the tofu and broccoli. We're into the tofu and broccoli of this chapter, the real substance of it. The preface is over, that we're all prepared. The preamble is established and all the protocols are there. And now our bodhisattva is telling us what happens when you lift the hood on our lives. That's been our analogy, kind of like a mechanic lifting the hood on the car and getting in to the engine and seeing how it works, making it right. The Buddha has just done that with our lives. He's saying, you know what goes on invisibly from the thought that leads to conception, that leads to gestation, that leads to birth, that leads to old age and death, that leads to rebirth? This is it. This is what happens. He's lifted the lid, lifted the hood. We're looking down at the engine. And the rest of our text from here on in this chapter is different ways of explaining these things. It explains it one way. If you don't get it, it tries another way. If you don't get that, it tries a third way, so that we ultimately understand, where do people come from? The Buddha's scheme has 12 links, 12 things that are like tied together. One pulls the next. If this didn't pull this one, then this wouldn't be. But once pulled, it comes into being. And there's a cycle. You get from 1 to 12, and the structure collapses, but it begins again. Because why? It's a natural process. He's describing a natural process, how things actually work. So we dive right in. Instead of talking about it, let's talk it. So he says, that is to say, so wei. Where were we here? So wei, ye wei tian, shi wei zhong, wu ming an fu, ai shui wei run, wo man gai guan, qian wang zheng zhang, sheng ming si ya. Okay? So we've got a agricultural, a garden analogy. So he's taking us out into the world of plants to understand what's going on. What does he say? He says, karma is the field. In other words, what you do, what we do with our bodies, things we do with our bodies, the words we say with our mouths, the thoughts we have with our mind, are fertile. Fertile. Stuff grows there. When you do karma, when we create things, when we do stuff, there's a result. It's not that it goes away or it vanishes. You do it and there's a field, and a field is planted. Okay, that's the first idea. So behavior is like a field. Consciousness is the seed. Consciousness, what does consciousness do? It knows the difference. Consciousness knows. A bird flies by, you saw it. Okay, you put some honey on your tongue, you know it. It's really sweet. Okay, so consciousness knows the difference. Karma's the field, consciousness is the seeds. Once something comes to consciousness, plant it down. There's a planting. The seed is in the fertile ground. It's not enough. You need other things there to make it work. What do you need? You need some, it says, ignorance is a covering darkness. You need night. You need sun and day, but then you need night to cover over the seed so it can start to do its magic stuff. And sure enough, that seed, when the time is right, and what do? You add water. You add water down, and pride and arrogance irrigate the field so that the water soaks in the dark, in the fertile ground, and a net of views increases. Sprouts of name and form emerge. Oh, this is our first list of the 12. The Buddha is taking us through step by step how things come about. And that includes us, our bodies, and our lives. Okay, so this is gardening analogy, because why? We know what that is. Anybody who's ever put a avocado seed in the windowsill till it split, and then you put it into a glass jar, and you see that, you see the green sprout come out, and sure enough, an avocado arises out of the seed. The fun part is you can see it. You can see it right there in the jar on the windowsill. Your science experiment in what is it, 6th grade where science happens? 5th grade? So you see these, you see seeds actually plant. If you've ever planted bean sprouts, like alfalfa sprouts or brown rice sprouts, you've seen this process happen. If you've ever had a potato that was under the sink for too long until the eyes came out of the potato, same idea. In the dark, with irrigation and a little bit of moisture, once the seed is there, it grows. Okay, so the Buddha is borrowing this analogy to show us what happens. Okay, then what happened? Sense, name and form grow and create the 5 sense organs. Once consciousness is in there saying, oh, this exists, I call this sweet, I call this bright, red. Once you have the name and form, then you have something that recognizes the name and form. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body. It gives us 5 here because mind is separate. The sense organs, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body, pair with their objects, sights, sounds, smells, tastes, sensations of touch, and there's contact. Eye sees form, ear hears sound. Contact happens, and what happens? You register feeling. You've got it. And after feeling, then what happens? Then there's love and hate. He doesn't say love and hate, but it's love or hate, either one. Once there's love or aversion, hatred, then you grasp or you try to get away. You grasp because you like it, you want it, you know it. It's there, it's mine, me and mine arise. Existence comes into being because you want it. Existence arises in every realm, a body with the 5 skandhas, meaning the components of the personality comes about, you're back. You're here, you're born. Once born, once we come out, it's only a matter of how many breaths will we take before it's our last one, and ultimately into death. So, okay. There will be a quiz at the end of the lecture, and I want all of you to try your best. So, here we have this list, this amazing list. The Buddha is like, he's a biology teacher, right? The Buddha is telling us about biology. And truly, if we opened a window on the womb, we would see these processes happen every time a child comes into being. Not only would we see it in the ground, we'd see how sprouts arise, we'd see how a baby comes about in the womb. So, and then into birth, and once there's birth, of course, then, hello, you know, what's your name? Where do you live? And oh, getting old, and then, oh, gone, to return. This is the process. So, how about this? What about this? Like I've said repeatedly, there are those who claim that this is the Buddha's major contribution. You see, this is, of all the different kinds of religious teachings in the world, the one that is uniquely the Buddha's to describe is this idea of conditioned arising. When the conditions are there, it pulls this thing into being. When that comes into being, it pulls another condition into being. And the result of that, why is the Buddha worried about this? I mean, why in the world would he give us this biology lecture? It's because of the next line. What's the next line? 于老死时生住热闹，因热闹故忧愁悲叹，众苦结集，此因缘故，其无有集者。 任运而为，任运而灭，以无灭者，菩萨如是随顺观察，生起之相。When old age and death happen, we feel intense misery, and because of that misery, there's worry, grief, sorrow, and lamentation. A multitude of suffering accumulates. Suffering comes from causes and conditions, yet there is nothing there which can accumulate it. The process moves on to its end, yet there's also nothing which ends. Thus the bodhisattva contemplates the characteristics of conditioned arising. Okay, that's our first full explanation of this Dharma, which pops up in every list. Every time there's a list of Buddhist Dharmas, what do we have? Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, 12 links, 6 paramitas, right? The 4 limitless attitudes of kindness, compassion, joy. And people always nod to the 12 links and move right on by, right? We're just hoping nobody says, and what are those 12? Tell me again. Because you got to go, let's see, and there's ignorance is the first one, and death's the last one. Now we got 10, right? And let's see, because it's, what's the difference between grasping and love? What's the difference between, contact and feeling? In there, it's not clear unless you have studied the sixth ground, our text right here. The Buddha goes into these as our text unfolds. This is the first time we've met him, and he explains them one by one. So we know the difference between contact and feeling and craving and grasping and love and etc. So this is the first time we've seen it, and let's put it in a context so we can understand it. We've come from the place of the meditator. In the fifth ground, it was all about the meditator who's so good at meditating. His samadhi or her samadhi is so stable that they can actually spend less time meditating and more time out teaching expediently, right? The fifth ground is about how to teach with music, how to teach with art, how to teach with architecture, how to teach with medicine and with science, how to get people interested in their own liberation with using all these different fangbian, right? All these upaya, skill and means. That's what it's all about. The bodhisattva becomes a skillful teacher because his meditation, her meditation is so well-rooted that nothing's going to shake them. They're not going to meet something and run towards it and try to grab it and own it. So from that meditation, the bodhisattva is able to step forward to wisdom, the prajna state, number 6. That's where we are. What happens in number 6? Bodhisattva's been meditating a lot, and things start to break up. Things that used to be really solid, things that used to be familiar and logical, and everybody affirmed them. Like what? Like up is up and down is down. Day is day and night is night, right? You think, well, yeah. Well, when you're meditating and you enter samadhi, all that familiar basis starts to appear as it really is, which is what? Just a convention. Just a common way of referring to an experience that we have in ordinary consciousness. But because of meditation, we leave ordinary consciousness, and we get to a place where even the thing that knows starts to break up. How much the more the things that it knows, right? Your mind isn't the same as before. Your eyes are not the same as before. Even the basis for knowledge itself starts to shake, rattle and roll. And the longer you sit, the more that experience happens. It's called emptiness, right? And first you empty out the self because the body is not the same as it was. Then bit by bit, you start to empty out the world around you, dharmas. So they say you empty self and you empty dharmas. Is it a theory? It's not. It's the experience of the bodhisattva. as she's sitting there. She actually sees that happen. And at that point, the Buddha says, very good. Well done. Now, you're ready for prajna paramita. You're ready for step number 6. So that's where our 6th ground kicks in. What is the bodhisattva doing now? He, she is using that awareness of emptiness on life itself. Okay? If we had to say, what's the 6th ground about? It's about life. It's about living systems, where they come from, how they're made, using the meditator's insight. And it starts with emptiness. So, notice tonight we got the first explanation of it, right? And in the middle of nothing going on whatsoever, in the middle of stillness that the bodhisattva has accomplished through his sitting, what does he see? He says, oh, you couldn't sit still, so karma planted a seed. Now, karma, don't think bad, right? Don't think, oh, karma means like punishment, fate, bad luck, all the things that most of us think that karma means. Here, it's a very neutral activity. It just means doing. In the midst of nothing going on, that the bodhisattva has now realized that fundamentally there's nothing really going on until we act. There's nothing given. Karma, habitual behavior doesn't have a root. It doesn't have a doer. He's emptied out the doer and the doing, right? He sees that now. In the midst of all that, guess what? We go ahead and kill, steal, lust, lie, drug ourselves, get depressed, get proud, get upset, get jealous, gossip. We, in the midst of nothing going on, create all this mischief and set in motion that link, which pulls the next link, which pulls the next link, which pulls the next link, and the whole mechanism starts up. That's what's going on. And that's what he's seeing here. And he's describing how that happens. So that's our context, okay? That's what I wanted to give you as a way to understand what's happening here, because none of it is given. It's all waiting for us to act for it to happen. If we don't happen it, then this mechanism is there, but we're not tugging on the chain. We're not pulling that first link. But it sure is hard to not do it. And a bodhisattva is somebody who, right at this point, is able to see this process and not do it, not pull that first link out of ignorance, but she pulls it out of compassion. They go back in, watch the whole thing work, and make it work again, but without intent, without ignorance as the covering darkness. Bodhisattvas can go back in and make it work by choice, by vows, not by karma. So, that's interesting. They say people come back to life in our world either through karma or by vows. And if it's by habit or karma, then you couldn't avoid it. You owed a debt to somebody, or somebody owed something to you, and so you're back to collect, or you're back to pay off. The bodhisattva comes back because he chooses to in order to help others out, in order to rescue beings. That's a different reason for taking a body. But when he does, I think the mechanism is just the same. So, how interesting, huh? So let's look sideways at this. What are some of the things in our lives, some of the crafts, some of the skills that we have where you, as the actor, as the doer, set something in motion that someone else, without your knowledge, doesn't know could happen, but when you do it, it happens, and oh, how wonderful. You saw an invisible set of causes and conditions, and because you do it, oh, look at the result. I'm thinking of baking. Yeast, right? Baking soda, or just cooking in general. But you ever make bread? You start out, if it's yeasted bread, you start out with flour, water, maybe a little bit of salt, maybe a little bit of sugar, and you mix them together, and you add yeast, Pfaffen, right? And when you add the yeast, suddenly start to bubble up, right? And you cover it with a wet towel and set it aside, and you come back, and it's all grown. And then you punch it down to get the air out of it, and it goes up again. And then you put it out on flour on the counter, and you beat it, pumps, knead the dough, and get it all mixed up just right, and then shape it into loaves, and put it in the oven for just the right amount of time, and it browns on the outside and cooks on the inside, and you bring it out. Delicious, right? Somebody who doesn't know the process would go, you started with that and you got that? How did that happen, right? Well, at the right time, at the right temperature, with the right amount of moisture, you added yeast. And the flour turned to dough. And then because of your skill, you know the right steps, you turn it into bread. And poof, there it is, right? Cooking in general is pretty much the same way. But there is, where was that know-how? Invisibly, it was right there. It was waiting. It was just waiting for you to like pull the chain, to pull the rope, to press the button, and bread was the result. So invisibly, you had that, that knowledge. How neat. Somebody who didn't know, knowledge was still there, you just didn't know it. Okay? We have a lot of the sutras, illustrations of how stuff work, are illustrated beautifully with technology. Technology and its tools, for example, telephones, televisions, and now these devices. These things give us incredible concrete illustrations that everybody knows of these principles. For example, that we have a whole new phrase, there's an app for that, right? There's an app for that. That's to say, ever since Steve Jobs and company created the iPhone and threw it open to developers and said, go for it, create apps to bring function, to bring abilities to this platform, this device, and people did. And sure enough, we've got apps, all these wonderful little things that do wonderful things, and it's just a bunch of colored pixels on a Gorilla Glass screen, but once you touch it, once you pop it, oh, I didn't know you could do that. The one that I use most, other than the phone and email, is my guitar tuner. Ah, 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 oh, 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 oh. That's it. And it's very precise, and it works. It's a guitar tuner. And before that, I had to, get a tuning fork or something like that, or play it out of tune. My ear wasn't good enough. So once you know how, well, I can tune my instrument on my phone. It was there, but it took somebody to know how to do it. Once, if you don't know how to do it, it seems like magic. Okay? Let's look at our text. Karma is the field, consciousness is seeds, ignorance is covering darkness, The water of love brings the moisture. Pride and arrogance irrigate the field. The net of views increases, and sprouts of name and form emerge. So out of the seed comes a sprout. Was it magic? No, it wasn't. It took a seed of consciousness which had the potential to grow. It took ignorance, water, irrigation, a net, and out came the sprouts. Okay, so the Buddha is using this analogy of gardening to say it's magic. Just like the baking analogy, gardening is the same. Somebody who knows how can turn a piece of fallow land into this fruitful, fragrant, beautiful field with flowers, fruits, food, and fragrance. My gosh. Just because the gardener knows how, right? Sometimes it goes astray. Guoji today offered up some dragon fruit and some lychees that he told me came all the way from Los Angeles so that the monks could have some exotic fruit. None of your apples and oranges, dude. Give me some dragon fruit and some lychees, right? Lychees are hard to find in Northern California. So I thought about the dragon fruit, and we grow them in Australia. Thank you very much. We grow them on in our field right there at Land of Medicine Buddha. At Gold Coast Dharma Realm, Land of Medicine Buddha, GCDR. And the funny thing is, as I was eating my dragon fruit today, I was thinking about sometimes the karma is shared. This is how personal karma becomes collective karma. So we're all excited. And Qin Nai Shi, who is not here tonight, was part of this process. And we're growing these dragon fruit, the ones that are now, they look so pink, they look fluorescent pink, and they have this. And we grew them on a trellis. And one vine comes up, and the vine starts, you plant starters like this, and they go up, and they they have these tendrils that go out and grab on. And once the tendrils, enough of them are set, then it splits open, and out comes this really exotic blossom. This blossom looks like a trumpet. It's like a trumpet flower. It's really, really exotic looking and luxurious. And then from the middle of the trumpet flower comes this nubbin thing that starts to grow, and it has the shape of a dragon fruit, a little one. Oh, cute. So we're looking at them, and there's like 10 of them out there, and every day we walk by, and how are they doing? Oh, they look really big. Yeah, good. Water them and make sure that there's enough ash on the, and cover them, and be careful if the wind blows too strong someday and blows them over, and taking care of them, watching them. They're getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and sure enough, we're saying, should be about a week, before we get the first ones. So we're all like, I don't know. Australian dragon fruit, how nice, wow. Good, and come out the morning before they're ripe, and there's only the vine and some like remnants down below, like the leaves are down below and they have teeth marks on them. The wallabies got them. They knew just when to get them. And I was like, where'd the dragon fruit go? The wallabies came, it's like there were 3 of them, and they were like, they ate them all in no time, and they burped, and they were like, they were so like, suckers, they were, So we didn't have any that time. Wait for another whole round. And so different karma. Now, we're Buddhists, and we don't, pursue wallabies to get our dragon fruit back. Come here, wallaby. But the thought occurred, So we have to wallaby-proof our dragon fruit patch next time. Wallabies are little kangaroos, and they sure like our dragon fruit. So sometimes the karma goes sideways, or it's mixed. Individual karma becomes collective karma. So now, of course, the wallabies, they think, oh, thank you very much for growing these nice fruits for us. It's very thoughtful of you to keep them down on the ground where we are. So wallabies can jump. They can launch themselves into the air. So we have to put them under wire or something. So here it grows. What else? What else are these like? I suppose brain surgery. Brain surgery is a kind of invisible skill. I remember Dr. Wilson at United Religions, at URI, United Religions Initiative, we got to know a lot of the people in San Francisco of means who thought that interfaith was a good thing. And Dr. Wilson came over once and sat with us and talked for a week, and we had a good conversation at a retreat. And I didn't know who he was until somebody said, oh, that's the one, that's the Dr. Wilson. And there had been an article written in New Yorker magazine about this doctor who they said had 3D imagination, because a lot of brain surgery is done without sight. Because why? If the problem is halfway back, you can't slice down and go repair it. You have to project where it should be, and with the brain intact, take your laparoscopic whatevers and cut out the problem, the tumors and whatever. And this doctor, they say, is a genius who is able to imagine in 3D where it must be. There's no like radar or infrared that can go in there to see. So he is able, with his skill, to visualize and think outside his body, outside his fingers, to perform operations. And they said that it was an article in New Yorker, right, about this ability, and they say he couldn't teach it because it's really a gift that you're either born with or not. And so, how amazing that invisibly this brain surgeon is able to, in his mind, figure out where the problem should be. And he had this incredible success rate of, 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100. And no one could figure out how he could do it. No one else dared. Because with them it was still analog, But he was able somehow to switch into another realm as if he had special vision. And you wonder, what is that? Where is the mechanism that allows someone to go beyond and yet accomplish that ability? Another example of these trails in space that the Buddha is describing, seeing how one thing leads to another. There's a famous quarterback on San Francisco 49ers from the 60s and 70s named John Brody. This is way before Joe Montana. Don't even talk about Joe Montana. This is like when I was growing up. John Brody was the quarterback. And he is famous. I have the video that shows this happening. John Brody had a kind of samadhi, a kind of concentration as an athlete, that he said, when I let the ball go, doesn't matter how long the pass is. I have a picture. I have a video of him throwing a 70-yard touchdown pass. The ball travels 70 yards in the air. He says, as soon as I let go of the ball, I know where it's going. He says, there's only one place it can end, and that's in the hands of the receiver. He says, the ball is following a preformed flight path through the air. And he said, I see it very slowly. It's like the ball, he drops back, and he throws it, and the ball spirals. You can see it goes up, and it spirals, and it goes down, and Ray Warfield is down there, catches it, because that's the only place the ball can be at the end of its flight. And he says he sees it slowly arcing through the air, kind of like through Jell-O, you know. Scores. And you think, yeah, what is that? What is that knowledge of how the mechanism works in order to deliver the ball to the hands of the receiver at that time? Because it's happening at full speed. The man is running down the field as fast as he can, being pursued by, you know, the secondary of the opponents. So, anyway, John Brody has that knowledge of something invisible that yet to him is as clear as can be. So, here's the Buddha saying, every time we come into form, there is a mechanism. It's mechanical. That's the thing. That's the funny thing about this. We're looking at a Buddhist sutra, a sacred scripture. He's saying, this is a mechanism. This is an invisible process that works every time. Here's how it works. Just the way yeast acts with flour and water and darkness in a bowl until the right time at the right temperature, and the dough rises. Same way, he says, the dough rises as soon as you have what? Action, consciousness, ignorance. In the dark. And then you add love, pride, and arrogance, views, and sure enough, name and form. Name and form create the sense organs. Sense organs touch things. Eyes touch sights, ears touch sounds. There's contact. When there's contact, okay, I saw that, I heard that, contact. Contact, there's a feeling. The nerves are activated. You feel good, you feel bad, you feel happy, you feel sad, you feel pleasant, you feel unpleasant. And after there's feeling, then you sort it out and you say, I really like that. That felt so good. Chocolate is so tasty, sweet. That chocolate feeling. And when there's feeling, you want it and you love it. I really like that. Once you love it, you don't want to let go of it. That's one of the links, right? I love that. How many times after you love it, you say, I love it, but I let it go? Nah, not very often. Big break right there. So, and after you grab it, then it exists because you created something there. It exists. Before that, there was still a chance to break it. You could still let it go before existence. But once it exists, then it comes forward, and you've at this point, volition is there. You've had it. It's born, and once it's born, it's only a matter of time before it dies. Once it dies, what happens? Comes the last one. That was the paragraph we just read. Misery. Right? What happens when it dies? Pain. That whole last paragraph. Old age and death happens. There's misery, worry, grief, sorrow, lamentation, a multitude of suffering. So, here's the Buddha's project. This is what he discovered. He set out to discover this. Sure enough, he did. What did he want to discover? Where does death come from? Furthermore, how does suffering end? The Buddha went out, the city, saw old age, sickness, death. Then he met a cultivator. And he asked the question, can suffering end? And the cultivator said, I am cultivating the path that leads to the end of suffering. You can do it. Well, this is his answer. Here's the process. Okay, so that's what this is about. That's our biology text that is the sutra. But here, there's something even more, I don't know, is the word cool? This is even more like revolutionary or significant, which is what he says, there's all this suffering, and here's how it happens. But you know what? There's ultimately nothing there at all. The process goes from 1 to 12, and yet there's nothing that stops either. It's all, quote, in vain. It's all in vain. Because why? He starts from emptiness. He starts from meditation. And he sees this whole thing happen. Okay? And so the bodhisattva sees this, says, yeah, that's really tragic, because all you have to do is sit still and let it go, not pick it up, and nothing happens. You're fine. You really don't need all that trouble. But we can't. So the bodhisattva's got to put on his tennis shoes, get out there and get involved. If we could sit still, if we could be patient in the midst of all that, then it's like the world is good. But because we haven't heard that, so we got this karma, these habits that push and pull us and drag us and scare us, and squash us. We have to act because karma's wind pushes. Okay. What about all that? Does that make sense? Is this like revolutionary? Is this what you saw in your meditation? Do you see what the Buddha saw? This is the end of his search. This is what's wrong, you know. Why does it hurt? The answer is here. Okay, so this is how the 12 links pull. And there's more to the story. We haven't got there yet. We're going to find out. There's also a way to unlink them. And that's coming up ahead. So, how this is taught, the way Shifu gave it to us was the way it's been explained for hundreds, if not thousands of years in the Tiantai teachings. And they usually just step you through it. 无名缘行，行缘识，识缘名四，名四缘六入，六入缘处，处缘受，受缘爱，爱缘取，取缘有，有缘生，生有缘老，病死，忧悲苦恼，一切苦数从此而生。Right? They take you through every step. Ignorance, conditions, activities. And the verb in between is yuan. Yuan means conditions. Okay? And conditions isn't a good translation. What does it mean? Tugs. So ignorance is the first. It begins, the traditional way of describing it begins with ignorance. So once you have ignorance, meaning I don't know why, I don't know, I didn't see that first thought, I didn't catch my habit pulling me, but because I didn't get it, Wu Ming Yan Xing, I was pulled into action. Ignorance conditions activities. Terrible translation. Makes no sense, right? Ignorance conditions activities. What does it mean? It means in the dark, I didn't know, and I went ahead and did it anyway. I don't know why, but I did it. That's how we really translate it. I don't know why, ignorance, but I did it. Activity. So without being aware of why, I just reached out and smacked him. Or, you know, I didn't have to say that, but I said it, and she now stopped talking to me. Okay? Don't know why, but I did it. So at this point, when Shifu was explaining this, he gave it one common illustration. He would say, the guy looks at the pretty girl, and something moves inside, and he doesn't know why. But he's got that feeling, right? And the girl looks at the handsome guy, doesn't know why, but she likes him. And so that's ignorance, conditions, activity, right? You don't know why. Why do you love him? I don't know, I just do. You know. So he would always put it in terms of male-female romantic relationships. That's how he would say, Wu Ming Yan Xing, because that's one that probably people can relate to. I don't know why, right? But it could be hate. Why did you take an instant dislike to that? I don't know. It's just something about him, her. You know. So, it's his haircut, right? She's wearing the same dress that I paid $1,500 for and showed up with the same dress at the party. You know. I know why I hate it, because of that. Right? It's not ignorance, it's because of that dress. So, what is it? Wu Ming. Wu Ming means no light. And what Shifu was referring to, what the Buddha is referring to here is in our consciousness, what's called the storehouse consciousness, which everybody has, we have this accumulation of all of the debts that are owed to us and all the things we owe to other people through our actions. They're invisible, they're weightless, but they're still the seeds that are planted down. It's in consciousness. And when the time comes, we meet that person for better and for worse. We encounter that illness, we encounter that situation, we get the fellowship that we should have gotten. We meet the person who ultimately is going to kill us, or who we're going to kill, or the person we're going to marry, or the person who we owe money to, or who owes us money. All those potentials, all those dynamic seeds, potent seeds, are there in the dark, waiting for the time. And when the time comes, up they come. So they say that one of the things that made the Buddha, become the Buddha this time was when he came back as the Prince Siddhartha, most of his karmic seeds had been ripened and come to fruition. So his karmic seed bank was nearly empty when he came as the prince. He still had 3 debts remaining, they say. So that's what he was doing in life after life of cultivation, was just waiting out all those seeds to come ripe and not creating more in the process. So interesting, huh? How that works. Question? So that's, we're back as men, we're back as women, we're back as, monks or nuns, back as lay people, we're back as citizens of this country, that country. We're living in a place where there's no warfare immediately in the neighborhood, where we know pretty much tomorrow there's going to be food on the table, where we have water, but it's getting pretty desperate in places in California. And so all of these karmic connections come about because of the seeds we have in our seed bank, in our 8th storehouse consciousness called the alaya. And when the time is right, up they come. And we don't know why. 不知道. I don't know why. I just did it. Right? It's because up came that seed. That's why. So the trick is, now, as we're going to discover as we go, that as these 12 links are explained, and the chain that pulls each one is explained, there are 3 places in the 12 where if you are aware, you can stop it. You can unlink it. And I'm not going to go into it now, but we'll discover that volition can break the chain at 3 different places. And each one of those is simply by refusing to move before the wind. Just saying, let it go. I'm meditating. I'll talk to you later. Right? So the thing about meditation and also repentance, let's just say samadhi, stillness of mind, one of the benefits of that is, as these states arise, we see them. They emerge as thoughts. I think I'll go steal that car, right? I think I'll eat the entire pumpkin pie, you know. I think I'll go quit my job and get a sailboat and, you know, set off for Fiji, you know. The choices, these ideas, we get a review of them. Like, why did you do that? It just seemed like a good idea at the time, we say, you know. When in fact, if you were able to go, no way, okay, let that one go, dodge the bullet, you know, then it emerges, you don't act on it, you can, in a way, pay it back if it's not a life debt or something. So, how interesting, huh? The advantages of having some stillness. Okay, I told you the story before. It really bears retelling. We're sitting in lecture at Gold Mountain Monastery, and Sherfuk is explaining the sutra, as he always does every night. But this night, he's coughing. He's coughing, and his eyes are watering, and he's sneezing, and he's really, really uncomfortable. And we're kind of like, Sherfuk, are you have a Kleenex? You're okay? You know, like that. And we never see our teacher at a disadvantage like that. And so he's like, okay, he says, we're going to transfer early. He said, he said, what, better yet, he said, you all wait, why don't you meditate, and if I'm back, I'll join you. If not, when the time comes, you transfer. Okay, so Sherfuk gets off the lecture seat, goes upstairs. And we're like, sitting there, and time comes, and we transfer, and then 10 minutes later, Sherfuk comes down, and we're all like, Sherfuk, what happened? And he said, you've never seen me like that before, right? I said, yeah, never. He said, well, he said, don't assume that I've always been your teacher. He said, in fact, I've been everything. He said, in the Han Dynasty, I was a general, military general, and we won. And he said, if I had let things be, it would have been better. But he said, because of conditions, he said, I killed the opposing general, executed him. And it was unrighteous. Should not have done that. And he came back for me tonight, he said. In fact, I owe him my life. And he said, he's been after me all these centuries, and it was like the second century Common Era, like 200 or something. And he said, good thing I have a little cultivation, because even though I owe him my life, he said, I transferred merit to him and took him across. So he's in a much better place now, and that was okay with him, so I paid it back. And the illness that you saw was the extent of it. He said, if I didn't have some samadhi and some blessings, then I would have had to go with him. And we'd come around again, he said. But I was able to, big disasters become little ones go away, he said. So he said, that's how it is. He said, that's not only how it is with me, that's how it is with all of us. He said, all of you are in the same situation. You don't know when the time comes, and when the time comes, you go. So now if you have some cultivation, if you have some samadhi, then you have something to say about it, he said. So that's what happened tonight. Do you believe me? We're all going, uh-huh. He says, well, those of you with good roots can believe. If you don't believe, that's not a problem. He said, but how do you explain it? Okay, sure. So, how interesting, He was able to see the debt that he had to this general who he killed unrighteously, shouldn't have executed him. And that ordinarily, that kind of killing debt requires repayment. But if you can really sit still and have enough blessings and cultivation. What he said was, good thing I have enough cultivation, he said, whatever that means. I don't know, as Shifu state. He said, I didn't have to give him my life. And the big disaster became little. So interesting, my goodness. So, okay. Now, we went through this section tonight. Big chunk of text, because I wanted you to see the 12. They start with ignorance, and they end with the suffering that comes with grief and lamentation and tears and vexation after death. Death is 12. And it's always 老病死. Age, illness, and death are number 12. Birth is number 11. So we're going to, by the time this lecture series is over, I hope you all will know the 12. And when I kid you about a quiz, you'll be able to actually put down the 12. But the clue, the first step, is ignorance, meaning I don't know, meaning unlike Sherpa, we don't see those things we did in the past. We don't see the seeds we planted because we're in the dark of Wu Ming, no light, ignorance. Technical term. It's not you're ignorant. It's not an insult. It's reality of not seeing all the things we've done in life after life. So ignorance is the first condition. And out of ignorance we act. Karma pushes us forward. Our habits push us into action. And we don't know why, but it happens. And steps, all the way down to 老病死, right? Old age, sickness, and death, which outside of the 12 leads to suffering. Okay? That's the process. And tonight it's really juicy because he finishes it by saying, and in the middle of this whole process, there's nobody home. You can't find anybody doing this or receiving it. Still don't exist. But the process is real, and the suffering is real. So it's just like a play, It's like a tragedy. It's really like a TV show where you just see the sadness. And you see, and if, you're outside, you're in the seats off the stage going, don't do it, oh, they did it. Oh, man, right? Because you can see the setup. And yet the actors on stage have to go through it. And we're the actors going through the play, right? So, fascinating stuff. This is Shakespearean drama of our lives, only it's real. And who's the playwright? We are. Who's the audience? We are. Who's the director? We are. Who are the stars and the villains? Same. Now, another comment, and I said this last week. When you take this whole description of what's really going on, and then you go to theistic religions, explanation. Who made me? God made me. Right? Why did God make me? To serve Him and to love Him. Right? That's where I came from. I was a gift from God. You think, what about the 12 links that are like operating right this instant in my brain as I'm sitting here? Well, never mind all that stuff. God made you. Okay. So, not to laugh at it, not to poke fun at it, that would be ignorant on my part. But different folks want different answers, right? This is an answer for, let's say, an adult. This is an answer for somebody who can accept the fact that we're at the controls tugging this process into action again. The play is back on stage. I'm doing it again out of ignorance, being pushed forward. Why did you do it? I don't know. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Well, what happened was link, 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 resulting in, right? So that's a really satisfying answer, but it's a complicated, intense, complex mechanism. The Buddha says, just like yeast makes bread, yeast makes dough out of flour and water, the 12 links make suffering out of empty space. Nothing going on. We can't sit still. We do it. Here it comes. The play's on the stage. Tragedy, comedy, it's up to us. Okay? Yes? Neat? Yeah, Connie. What came before ignorance? Okay, where did ignorance come from? Well, I think that's one of those questions that the Buddha would probably say, he would probably answer with silence, because even if he were to give it a name, it wouldn't help us. It's like if somebody says, where was the first Buddha? You know, when is the last world? And he didn't answer, because that's only like, I've asked the same question myself, but that's just curiosity. It's just, I'm curious. In describing this, his goal is to do what? End suffering. That's still the goal, right? That's why he left the palace originally. He wanted to know where does suffering come from? So that's the goal. If you can do that, he's happy. So, okay, what were we before ignorance? Well, coming around again. It's a cycle. And where are we right now? Well, I don't see it, but I have the idea. Because why? I can experience it in my mind. I see something, I like it, I want it, I go for it. Right? I see something, I hate it, I get away from it. That's one of the links. Functioning through, pulling through. Okay, so that's not a very satisfying answer, but I think that's probably the best answer. Stephen, you're sitting there looking very thoughtful. Not? Okay, not. All right. I'm anticipating questions here. Okay. Yuanlin. There he is. Who's that? Yuanlin. Yes, Yuanlin. Enmeshed, you said. Mm-hmm. Mm. Okay, so Yuanlin's question was, he said, things are by themselves are not a problem, but I'm paraphrasing, you correct me if I get it wrong. It's not the case that certain things are bad and other things are not bad. It's when you get enmeshed in them, you went down the path and you got enmeshed in them, that trouble arises. So, is there any way to know what is appropriate and what is inappropriate? Is there any way to know what is harmful and harmless. Is that, did I represent it right? If, say it again. Mm-hmm. Okay. If your aspiration is bodhi, awakening, how do you know which path? And that's the perfect opportunity for me to say the 6 guidelines. Right? Master Hua brought out the 6 guidelines at times like this, over and over and over. So I'm going to do what he did to answer your question. Yanlin's question is, how do you know which path to walk on and which one to stop? Oh, I left out. Do you just do nothing? Do you just let it all go, let it all go, let it all go? No, can't do that. First of all, before we start to cultivate it all, before we even think, maybe I'll look into my life, start to do things according to Dharma. Before that time, mostly we just act out of instinct. Whatever comes up, Robert Thurman said it in the other day in the movie. He said, we mostly eat what appears before our face. That's the state of living beings. You eat what appears before your face and you sleep. And then you get up and you eat what comes to you. And then that's what, and when it's time to die, you die. But in the meanwhile, you just eat. So before you have any kind of cultivation, mostly it's instinct. We're so covered over with darkness, it doesn't occur to us that there's a choice. Okay, once you start to cultivate, what happens is you get a little light. You see thoughts rise because you've got some stillness in your mind and you can recognize, oh, I just saw that in my mind, that I actually had that thought. And I could actually see it rise. And when I sat still, it went away. I saw it fall. Thoughts rise and fall. That takes a lot of light, some stillness before you can see that. Let me give you one more analogy. Before we cultivate, our minds are like a radio full of static. When was the last time you listened to the radio in your car? If you're off the signal, it's then tonight's news brought to you by. You find the signal, it's clear. Turn it slightly, it's right? Our minds are like that mostly. We're full of desire, we're full of confusion, we're full of emotion, we're full of attachment, we're full of ignorance. That's all ignorance. Okay, once you begin to cultivate, then it's like, oh, I actually saw my thoughts. Like that. And so, at that point, Shifu would say, okay, check your thoughts. Is that thought contentious? Is it fighting? Are you having that thought based on a wish to get over somebody else? If so, recognize that you can follow that thought is fine, but it will lead to affliction. When you get what you want, you won't be happy with it. It's going to feel like a victory you wish you hadn't won. Or you lose. Worse, because, well, you fought and you lost. Because you were fighting. So, if a thought arises and you check it out, and there's no contention in it, it's actually contention-free, it's a really good idea, go for it. So the answer is, no, you don't let it go, let it go, let it go. You check out your motives. Okay, number 2, thought arises, is it greedy? Do you have something and you want something more, and especially belongs to somebody else? If you pursue that, and let's say you get it, will you be happy? Chances are greed is like a poison. The Buddha describes it as a poison. You won't be happy. You'll be afflicted, even though you got it. If you're greedy and you don't get it, it's more affliction. So, that thought rises, not a greedy thought, it's a thought of giving, of generosity. Sure, say, go for it. I'm losing my battery here. So, he went through the list, right? There's a list of 6. And, no, I got 2, still have 2. Still got some better. So he went through fighting greed, seeking selfishness, benefit, and dishonesty. And each one was the same. He would say, review the thought, check it out. If yes, fighting greed, seeking selfishness, benefit, and lying, go for it. Affliction results. You won't wake up. You're tying yourself deeper into the relationships you don't want. If your thought comes up and you say, no, there is none of those 6, absolutely, those are wholesome dharmas. Go for them. No affliction, you're fine. Okay? So, that's the answer. It's wrong to think that Buddhists do nothing. You know, bodhisattvas do a lot, but they're clear on the motives. Alan?
So in the past summer Guanyin retreat in DRBU, actually this is also the topic, the 6 rounds, 12 weeks. So that powers, we led a lot of discussions. So we had a discussion that this 12 weeks actually is not just applied to the whole lifetime, it's also applied to the soul experience. So it could be very quick, could be very mindful. And then as soon as one link breaks, it breaks. So we just kind of try to figure out a way to break, one link. So we feel, cycle will not continue. So we have another discussion about this.
Okay. So just a comment, Alan? Yeah. So Alan was talking about the summer session this year where Doug Powers described the 12 links for a week, was it? Or yeah, it's a really good event. And he said there are places where the links break. And if you break it, then the link is broken. I'm going to give you some more formal discussions of how the links break. And there are 3 places in the 12 where you can actually apply samadhi. And as I described it tonight, you sit still. It rises and you go, not this time. And it's gone. So they do exist. However, the traditional way that the Tiantai gives this is when ignorance ends, activities ends. When activities ends, consciousness ends. When consciousness ends, name and form end. So that you go from 1 to 12, ignorance pulls activities forward. Activities pulls consciousness. You also start again 1 to 12, unlinking them. It's not that you go backwards. It's that you go one way. It's 无明灭, 行灭, 行灭在识灭, 识灭在名词灭. So it's you wipe out, you灭, you eradicate the one. Eradicating ignorance. How do you eradicate ignorance? You wake up. Right? Mostly through Chan. They talk about the black lacquer barrel breaking in Chan. That's how 无明灭, ignorance is ended. So when you do that, all the links fall apart and you're liberated. So there is a traditional way of describing that, which we'll get to. Good question. Okay, did I see one more hand? Was that Feda or somebody had their hand up here? No? Okay. Yes, Connie. Your voice is just too quiet. Somebody relay what she said. How can you be sure that you don't create more karmic debt? Well, a really good way is to look at the 5 precepts and understand why the Buddha gave those. And another is to look at the list of the 10 evil and the 10 good deeds. They're specifically for that. The quick idea is that in Buddhism, the moral codes, the descriptions of how people should be people, were given for meditators so that they wouldn't trip themselves up on their way to liberation, on their way to ignorance breaking up. And the Buddha said, okay, you want to go all the way to liberation, to Bodhi, then don't kill. Because if you do, you're going to stumble. It's going to get you. You won't be able to meditate because you got this debt of the being that you forced the life out of. is not happy with you and will come back and do the same to you. It's coming. So avoid that and you're good. Stealing. If you take what isn't yours, the being that you took that from will come back for that debt. You create conditions in your mind that you won't be able to sit still. Right? So like that. So those, Connie, those are the specific actions the Buddha said, avoid those. You know, if you smoke a lot of marijuana, you know, even with friends, even because it's fun, you know, and the conditions are there, what happens is, you know, it's like when you go to meditate, you're like, I can't really see my thoughts. I'm kind of, you know, smoky. I'm kind of dopey a little bit. He. I'm hungry, you know. And that's why. It's like you don't want to meditate. Or if you want to meditate, it's like it's really hard to sit still when you're putting chemicals in your system that change your focus, you know. So it's not that you're bad or that the Buddha doesn't like you anymore. It's that you messed up your stillness, your clarity. And you have to wait until whatever those substances pass through. So that morality is not judgmental. There's nobody in there saying, oh, bad and wrong, you know. It's saying, oh, well, you've now tripped a little bit, and wait for your ankle to heal and you continue, right? So that's one thing I really like about this moral code is there's no judgment, there's no judge in there. There's a coach. The Buddha's a coach. He's saying, come on, here's how you do it. Rah, ah, okay, no problem. We'll find a way to get here. Straighten up. There we go. Go down. That's Nirvana Mountain. Go for it. He's a coach. Different approach. Sarah, we have time for one more. So you said, where do greed, anger, and delusion come into play? In the 12 links. They're all connected in ignorance. And they're poisons. Where does poison attack your system? You know, various places. So love is one of the links. And what is love? Well, it's an emotion. It's a feeling, and nothing wrong with love. It's perfectly fine and good, but it's strong, and it links the next link. It links the next, you know, the next state, which is, I don't want to let it go. So they're mostly all gathered together under it, because if you saw greed, you'd say, yuck, poison. No, I'm fine. My hands are full. How can I pick up something else? You know? But we don't see that, so we drop what we got and pick up, you know. Okay, Feda, last one.
We talked about how we can sometimes see seeds arise or habits arise. And just as a first reference over the time, in general you see habits arise. And a lot of times it's just the same thing over and over and over again. You kind of get discouraged, like why does this arise again? Almost makes it hard to kind of stay enthusiastic about having that focus and stillness.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of give up on yourself. How do you?
Yeah. So Feda's question was, if you have a habit of sitting still, if you're a meditator, and you see these habits arise, and you recognize, oh, I did this, and then you see it arise again, and then again, and then again. It's easy to get discouraged and to think, gee whiz, this is never going to end. How do you keep encouraging yourself in those situations? And I think what you're looking at is paramita 3 and 4, patience and vigor. Vigor is that ignored paramita. It's always kind of the extra one. Oh yeah, you work hard. What it means is that if you don't end that, if you don't empty out your storehouse of karma, who will? You know, you have to throw yourself back in there and come at it again. I asked that question that you asked many times, and what I got as an answer was, right, that's why it takes 3 great Samkhya eons, and yet it's the only game in town. You know, if you don't do it, who will? And if not now, when? You know, so you go, yeah. And in the meantime, Master Hua would say, so don't drive with your handbrake on. Let off your handbrake, go long, be kind to yourself, and really get to know your habits. Don't excuse yourself, and yet you can't pull your handbrake and drive. Every now and then you have to eat some ice cream, you know, or a cookie. Chocolate, I don't know, maybe chocolate. Every now and then, right? Chocolate ice cream sandwich cookies, yeah. Right. One in both hands and one under your arm just for later, you know. Boy, oh boy, how I know. Okay, time is up. Isn't this fascinating? I mean, it's like, how did he know? Good grief. Once you hear these truths, it's so difficult to go back to notions of a creator who just made us, and he made war, and he made disease, and he made Ebola, hemorrhagic fever, and just kind of for fun, you know, like the creator idea falls short in so many ways. And then when you have this as a substitute, it's go, oh, that's very satisfying for the mind. Dedication of merit time. Please make a wish. What's going to happen in Hong Kong tonight? The America's first Ebola patient is in critical condition. Doesn't look good for him. And do we have the karmic conditions for that disease to come to America? Certainly landed in West Africa. And yet, this time last year, it was just occasional. Now it's heading for 1 million patients, 1 million victims. So these seeds arise. So I think transference in those vows are so powerful in creating the conditions that keep disease and things like that away. So even though it's coming, it doesn't have to come quite so soon. Let's see if we're in tune here. Okay. Please make a wish as you would like to dedicate your merit, and we'll send it out. Every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward, may all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay. Now I'm heading back to Ohio at the end of next week, and our lecture will be delivered by a combination of, so Jin Chuansher is going. Myself, said Jin Chuansher, and maybe Jin Fo, okay. And we'll work on the 12 links before I go. So it's a fascinating topic, and I think not so much misunderstood as ignored. Is why 12 things. People don't want to mess with it, or if they mess with it, it's just a formula. They just go through the 12. You know, it's hard to grab because it's such a it's so vital. It's happening right this instant. It's one of those dharmas that is alive in us every conscious moment, every sleeping moment. The 12 links are pulling us forward, and they're deep, and this is our hardwired. If people are hardwired for things, this is our basic routing. This is where the wires go. And if science was going to investigate any part of the Dharma, this is, if only there was a way to prove this scientifically, people would be knocking on our door for translations of the sutra, because this is how it works. So we'll work on that, and we'll. So the two resident bhikshus will be lecturing next week, and I'll be back later. Tomorrow is our Buddha recitation day, so anybody who wants to recite the Buddha's name from 7:30 in the morning till 5, please come. It's going to be abundant, yummy food tomorrow, and the Buddha Hall is so cool on a hot afternoon. It's a beautiful place to be when the rest of the street and the neighborhood is burning up. This is a cool, calm place to be. So, highly recommended. You'll be hot wherever else you are. So come and be cool in the Buddha Hall. We're going ahead with our 3-day Chan retreat over Thanksgiving. So any 3-day Buddha recitation retreat. Anybody who would like to come to our very first extended retreat, please stay tuned. We don't have the details yet, but we're going to ask people to register online so that we can prepare the food. and we'll let you know how to do that. It's going to be CTTB style, but we'll add an hour of the Donglin Monastery style at some point, so people can compare and have that experience. That method is an ancient, wonderful method. It's just being preserved at Donglin Monastery. So we'll do that probably an hour a day or so. But we'll have to arrange food, figure out lodging, transportation. We may have to cap it, because I think chances are it's going to be really popular. So I think we may not be able to admit everybody who wants to join simply by not having enough places to bow. But that's not a bad situation. If it's popular, we'll do it again quickly. And so it's a first time for us. And we're not, we haven't figured all the answers out, but we're in the process. So, any questions about that? Things, ideas that you have? Not? Okay. You don't have to pay extra for that. That's free on the house. A little journey into the American musical imagination. Okay, so I don't think we have any more announcements. Any more? Can you think of anything? Guan Yin session is next week. Okay, the 11th to the 18th. This week we do have people leaving home, shaving their heads, which will be a happy thing. That's happening on Thursday up at CTDB. There's another happy bit of news coming out, which is tomorrow, Marty and I are taking delivery of the very first copies of our new publication of the letters we wrote to Master Hua on the pilgrimage that we took. It's called Highway Dharma Letters. Buddhist monks write to their teacher. Highway Dharma Letters. And it's big. It's a big format. It's got 100 photographs in it, black and white photos. So we're seeing the first ones tomorrow, advance copies, and then the rest of them arrive in October later. Bunch 5,000 copies. So I'm excited to see what they look like tomorrow. We'll Stan and Tony Shoptaw laid them out, so their books are always handsome. They're always good looking. So we'll see. Maybe we can. This edition. It's the black and white one that you have now, the standard size. That's been out for 8 years or so. This one has Houston Smith's preface. So Professor Smith wrote a preface for us, which is a big deal. And this book might get, Shifu's Dharma out a little further. So DRBU needs to find a way to make itself known. A new book was just published about Buddhism in America and all the different teachers and teachings. We're not in it. And it's some scholar's research, it's very comprehensive, and he's got these obscure teachers, but the RBA doesn't figure in it. So you go, maybe the bodhisattvas are protecting us, keeping us off the radar until the time that we actually emerge. So otherwise, how else could you figure that? Like somebody's not paying attention. We're just that ethnic group up there in the vineyards among the grapes. So it goes. All right. Yanlin, how many people online today? Past 40. Many people online as there are in present. That's good. So Jerry was in line to get on the plane, the boarding line, at National Airport or Dulles, I guess, maybe, in D.C., and noticed the gentleman standing in front of him had his iPad on, and he was watching a webcast, and it was Marty. And so he thought, excuse me, I was just there, and, who are you watching this? This is great. And the guy said, oh, well, the guy who's lecturing here, when I was a child, my mother took me and my brother out onto Highway 1 somewhere on the coast, and we got a chance to bow to them while they were bowing. We bowed with them while they were bowing north, and I discovered him again online, and so I'm happy to see that he's there. So Jerry took a picture of the guy. Sure enough, Marty and I went back. The picture in the book that's coming out tomorrow, there's a picture of him and his brother, and they're just like 8 or 9. Sure enough, these 2 Vietnamese kids came out with their mom and bowed along with us and brought us food 3 or 4 times. They came up from L.A. So, small world. Jerry ran into the guy watching on his iPad the broadcast on Friday night. So, how about that? Okay, so as they say, if it's the Tao, advance. If it's not the Tao, retreat. Take what's you heard that's good and put it to use. Take what you heard that's not so good and change it inside. So, see you in a couple weeks. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. Namo